Hi, we're going to do hawk roosting today, so if you can turn to that in your anthologies. Here's a picture of a hawk, just in case you're not familiar with hawks, because they're not something we tend to keep as a pet. Good luck trying. They are really powerful. They are the top of a bird food chain. They can eat what they want underneath that. They are, they're a natural born predator. So the key theme or central theme for this poem, if you want to make a note at the bottom of it, is power and abuse of power. But also closely linked to that is the natural way that some things are more powerful than others. So it is completely natural in our world that some animals are born naturally with more power so that they can overpower weaker animals and eat and survive. So if you think about science and your food chain links in biology, that our world is naturally designed that way. And they're kind of the deeper ideas that Hughes gets at. The idea that hierarchies, which we often want to fight against, don't we? Like everyone has to be equal, and we need to make sure that everyone has equal opportunities. Hughes's poem is saying to us, actually, it's completely natural for some people to be above others, and not that idea that there's not room for everybody at the top. So they're like the two kind of key themes, and I don't think you can talk about power without talking about how natural it is for this hierarchy of power to exist. So we'll see that in the poem as we move through. The third key theme really is arrogance and pride, because the speaker, the hawk, is so arrogant and he's so prideful because he knows he's the best and he knows he's the most powerful, and he's not afraid to highlight that or say it or show off or boast about it. So there's an element there of how power it links to power, but how power also makes us feel very secure and arrogant and assured of ourselves. Okay, with context this time I'm not going to give it to you separately. I'm going to link it to specific quotations because I think it'll help you embed it in your essays, and obviously that was one of our key targets. So we're going to try it this way. If you don't like it, let me know, and obviously I can go back to listing them. So what's the poem about? I'm just going to explore the title first. So obviously we've already talked about hawk, but the word roosting, it's basically when a bird settles to sleep or rest. So it kind of sets up the poem, the title. So we learn that it's a hawk speaking to us and it's resting. That's where it is. It's just sat chilling and it's talking to us. Okay. At the heart of the poem is the way power corrupts, as we've already sort of alluded to, and also how it reduces empathy for others. You'll see the way the hawk talks about killing things is just completely devoid of any empathy for them. But again, is that not natural? If nature had created hawks to have a guilty conscience every time they killed an animal to eat, they'd starve to death. So there's that element in it as well. The poem is a dramatic monologue because the hawk is just speaking aloud, and he's telling us his thoughts and feelings. There's no kind of indication of who we are as readers. He's just talking, and he's showing off. He's very arrogant. He's very boastful. Try not to use the word showing off in your essays. Try and use the word boastful. He's proud of his power over others, even though he hasn't really earned that power. Nature just gave it to him. Like the same thing we might say to someone who was born wealthy. While they've not earned those privileges, they've just born into them. So there's very clear links all the way through between the animal kingdom and human hierarchies as well. So the hawk can symbolize anyone who's at the top of any food chain. So for example, you might argue about patriarchy. The poem was written in 1960, so that following decade, the 60s, was kind of the second wave of feminism, but still very much the idea that male and females had defined roles. CEOs, I think, is a very modern interpretation of the poem, to think that now CEOs are at the top. If you own a business like a multinational corporation, you're at the top of the food chain. You've got a lot of power. Rulers, dictators, anything like that. Okay, just going to read through the poem for you now. I sit in the top of the wood with my eyes closed. That was a bad start. I had an extra word in. Sorry. Inaction. No falsifying dream between my hooked head and hooked feet, or in sleep rehearse perfect kills and eat. The convenience of the high trees, the air's buoyancy and the sun's rays are of advantage to me, and the earth's face upward for my inspection. My feet are locked upon the rough bark. It took the whole of creation to produce my foot, my each feather. Now I hold creation in my foot. I'll fly up and revolve it all slowly. I kill where I please, because it's all mine. There is no sophistry in my body. My manners are tearing off heads, the allotment of death. For the one path of my flight is direct through the bones of the living. No arguments assert my right. The sun is behind me. Nothing has changed since I began. My eye has permitted no change. I am going to keep things like this. So at the end there is where you get that feeling of this idea that power will, once you're in power, it's really easy to keep power. You know, of course the hawk wants to keep things like this because it's of advantage to him. He's not going to start, you know, supporting the rights of the people that he's going through the bones of to eat and keep his own power going. And then you've got this idea that the sun is behind him, he's in charge, and he's got the support of nature. If you see the sun as being a representation of nature there. You've got the idea that nature's designed him in this way. The air is an advantage to him, the sun's rays are advantages to him. He's holding creation in his foot, he's got complete control. And that he has no, you know, he's proud of the way he kills. My manners are tearing off heads. So if you read the poem at face value, you've basically got this very boastful, you know, megalomaniac. He's completely proud of what he does. He's got no empathy for others. You could read him as being a psychopath, you know, someone who has got limited emotions for other people. You know, he's just showing off how nature has designed him perfectly to be a killing machine. But let's dig a bit deeper. Okay, so, oh, sorry, I hate when I don't do the flying thing. What I've done with this, and I know it looks a lot, I've actually only selected about, well, 7 key annotations, and some of them do link to 2 quotations to help you with your cross-referencing, and the bits that are in bold are context links. You don't have to do them in a different colour in your poem if you don't want to, but it's up to you. So the reason I've just selected 7 is because you know, you've only got 20 minutes to analyse this poem anyway, so let's just don't do cognitive overload. I'm just going to keep you with 7 key things that you could easily write about in 20 minutes. However, when we compare Hawk Roosting to other poems, you know, there's an opportunity then to come back and revisit some of the other quotations. It might be more relevant then, and you'll kind of build your knowledge of the poem through that, because I think it's more useful to think about it in terms of comparisons anyway, as I've said to you before. Okay, so, and the reason I've highlighted the first line is because it's always good to analyse the opening line and the end line of a poem. They obviously set the scene and leave the reader with a certain atmosphere at the end, so our final thoughts. So, I sit in the top of the wood, my eyes closed. You've got that verb sit, he's very inactive. And it's that idea that once you're powerful, it's very easy to hold on to power. It's not like he's having to run around and enforce his power and say to everyone, I am powerful, you must obey me. He doesn't need to do that. He can just sit at the top of the wood. His eyes are closed. He's super chilled. He's safe. He's secure. He doesn't need to worry about predators. The fact that he's at the top of the wood, you know, he's obviously literally got a vantage point where he can see everything beneath him. And the top can also symbolise the top of the food chain, the top of the power hierarchy as well. Now, a close association with this poem is always dictatorship, because Hughes was writing in 1960. There was still, I know it might feel a long time after World War II to us, but it really wasn't in terms of, you know, public memory and their experiences. So, you know, people often refer to this poem as maybe being symbolic of the power of dictators and Hitler in Russia. So, sorry, I don't mean Hitler was in Russia, although, you know, he did invade it. You know, just, you know, Hitler specifically as being like the main dictator that the Western world would have been focused on, but also dictator Russia as well. So, sorry, that was so waffly. I'm going to move on. Right, the last line of the first stanza and then the first line of the second stanza both kind of link to the similar ideas. So we've got that in his sleep he's rehearsing perfect kills and eat. So that suggests that even in his dreams, he's focusing on perfect hunting. Like, it's as if it's instinctive. Like, you know, if you think that when you're awake, then you've got control over your conscious thoughts, or we have as human beings anyway. But if it's in his sleep that he's still rehearsing the perfect way to kill something, that highlights how much it's to the core of his natural being. He instinctively does this. This is how he survives. And it's this, you might argue that humans have got that same capacity in them as well, that, whatever your subconscious tells you, which is kind of what comes up when you're asleep, that's your natural instinctive urges, isn't it? That's your id, or, your natural needs and desires. And then he builds on that with the convenience of the high trees and the way that everything's of an advantage to him. The natural world is designed to help him be more powerful. It's not like he's earned it. He's just naturally gifted. So with both of those lines, Hughes could be suggesting here that nature enables some of us to be more powerful than others. Sorry about the double full stop. Like, it's completely natural for some, and that's your clear link to the bigger idea of the poem, and that it is instinctive, like we talked about food chains, to for living things to harm other living things, which is quite a negative thought. But Hughes is almost telling us to step back and realise that this is the world that we're living in, and he's not necessarily saying we can't make it better, but he wants us to acknowledge that that's the case, that there are things in this world that are naturally designed to harm other people. And at the bottom, we've got two very boastful quotations. So this is very good evidence for the idea of him being arrogant. And again, more ideas about power. So upwards, the earth has to face upwards for his inspection because he's at the top. He's lording over everything like a god. He's the master. And the word creation, I think, links very nicely to God as well. God created the earth. But actually, he's saying here that he now controls creation. So he's inspecting the earth like he's in charge of it, like he's a master. But then at the bottom, the whole last stanza, first of all, he's showing off that, creation has produced everything, each feather, they've designed me perfectly. But now I control creation. It's in my foot. And hawks' feet are really powerful. Whatever the hawks grasp in their feet has no chance of getting away. So the prey would just be stuck there. So you've got this idea that he now controls the thing that created him. And that's what dictators do a lot of the time. So obviously they rise up to power. The public support them sometimes, and then they lord over and they control the things that helps them get into power. Some dictators just ignore what the public want, but I do think here contextually that Hughes is building on fears of dictatorship following World War II. The idea that we society creates its own monsters. Okay, so the next last four. I think the first stanza here is really good evidence for his lack of empathy and his kind of boastful nature. He's just doing what he is designed to do, which is kill. I kill where I please because it's all mine. There is a complete lack of empathy there. He's even showing off. He's proud of what he's able to do. But remember, nature has made him that way. And in the last line of this stanza, similar, but just to precisely analyse it, my manners are turning off heads is a great line. It's obviously ironic because manners are supposed to be polite, but he's tearing, and tearing is a very violent word, isn't it? He tears off their heads. He doesn't even care how he kills them. He's just doing what he wants, and he can overpower them, and he's proud of that. And again, why wouldn't he be? Because he was naturally born to kill. That's what he's born to do. The next line, the allotment of death, is probably the most important one in the poem. Like mine forged manacles in London, it's kind of one of those central quotations you'd be silly to miss. So allotments are where things grow or live. I'm currently attempting to grow tomatoes. It's a slow process. He's growing death. Allotment is growth and death. He's growing a field of death because that's what he's designed to do. It's in his nature. And then there's a nice context link there for the idea that Hughes often writes of animals. That he writes a lot of poems about animals or through the eyes of animals, but they're always symbols of other things. So just link into that at some point in your essays. It'll get you a context mark. There's some interesting word level analysis in the next 2 lines, so it's not necessarily the whole quote, but for the one path of my flight is direct through the bones of the living. You've got a really nice, the one path suggests that that's all he's designed to do in life. Like, as human beings, we like to feel like we have many different paths to go down. We have different options and different experiences. The hawk doesn't have that. This is what nature has designed him to do. This is his one path through life. And the word through, I think, is really, really, really violent if you really step back and think about it. He is flying through life through the bones of other living things. He's so powerful. He's not just breaking the bones, he can fly through them. And if you think about, how dense bones are, you've got this feeling that he is so powerful. He's completely overpowering other people, and he's just a master of every living natural substance, almost, is what you feel like. So again, there's that sense of his power and violence there. I mentioned before about the sun is behind me. It is a really good quotation, so that was like a close runner-up for annotation, but I did mention it before. You can add it on if you want. But the most, again, I think this is after the allotment of death, this is probably the most important line. I am going to keep things like this. Hughes is saying so much about not only a hawk, but everything about power and how human beings naturally work as well. Of course, he's going to keep things like this. It's a perfect idea of, it's a perfect representation of the idea that power corrupts. Once you have power, you do not want to give it up. You want to keep it. And the hawk knows that he's advantaged. The hawk knows that he's better off than others, and he can take advantage of others. But so what? That's how nature designed him. He's just a lucky person. And if you think about maybe a rich person who's sat on, a pile of millions and billions of pounds and is sat there thinking, well, I happen to be born with this. It's my luck. Why should I have to give it up to other people? Why should I have to help other people? They should make their own money. So there's a lot of layers to that. And as you can see in bold there's just so many things that he could be symbolizing. And for context marks, you don't just need to be able to say Hughes was symbolizing this specific thing. You as a reader can explore the contextual relevance of this poem. What does this poem mean to you? In today's world, how might it make us think of different things to when he wrote it in the 1960s? So it could, it could be anything. It could be about race, gender, that I've already said about patriarchy. To people reading this in the 60s, during the second wave of feminism, this could be a symbol of patriarchy and how it controls and sustains its power over women. The class system, the hawk could be an upper class person. Dictators, as we've already said. To a modern reader, as I alluded to earlier, we might place CEOs here. You've got multinational corporations who are lobbying governments, who are taking advantage, who are trying to get laws passed in their in their favour. So there's different things you can consider that it symbolises, and I think that you guys are in a good position to do that. We've done a lot of thinking around the idea of class and hierarchies through Christmas Carol and Inspector Calls. So there's scope there for you to put your own sort of personal interpretation on it. Okay, so they are, I think, the 7 most important quotations if you were going to write about this for 20 minutes. And as I said, we'll come back and we'll revisit it from a comparative point of view, and you might see other things. If anything has come into your head as I've gone through that, please do take the time now to just add it on, because you might forget. Okay, I thought this was interesting, so you don't need to necessarily write this down, but I think it just supports the interpretation of the poem that I've given you. So some critics accused him of glorifying violence, which you can kind of understand, especially in these stanzas, I kill where I please, all the rest of that, the allotment of death, through the bones of the living. There's a lot of violence in the poem. And he actually did an interview in 1971, and he said in response to that, actually, what I had in mind was that in this hawk, nature is thinking, simply nature. It's not so simple because maybe nature is no longer so simple. So I think what this speaks to, this quote from the writer, is that he was very much focusing on the fact that this is the natural way, this is the natural order of things, that some people are designed to be more powerful and violent than others, and the animal world is designed that way, nature is designed that way. So hierarchies are a natural part of life. I actually added those commas in myself because I thought it would make it a bit clearer for you. So, you know, you can quote that as part of your essay, that, you know, Hughes himself said that in this poem, he believes the hawk is a symbol of nature. Nature is thinking, nature is talking to us. You know, and he's making the point there that it's not so simple, that the natural world is kind and the natural world is lovely. He's highlighting that the natural world isn't, and that as human beings we maybe have a responsibility to kind of acknowledge that so that we can do something about it. So just some final thoughts. To me, this poem is a reminder that the world is easier for some than others. You know, some people are born in much better conditions than others, and that is, again, the natural order of things. There's not really a way of countering that. Or maybe I'm being small-minded. Maybe you will all grow up and think of amazing ways to change that. I don't know. It's natural. Nature is designed. Nature's cruel. Nature's mean. Nature's unequal. But that doesn't mean, like, I don't feel this is a really negative poem. Like, I don't finish reading it and think, oh God, there's no point fighting for equality. There's no point fighting to close the gap between the rich and the poor. For me anyway, like, I think it's important to acknowledge what you're fighting against, and you are fighting against a natural world that wants division and wants hierarchy. It's definitely a reminder that power breeds power, just like wealth breeds wealth. So, you know, if you've got a lot of money, it's so much easier to make more money because you can invest it, you can buy houses, you can let your investments grow. And it's the same with power. The more power you have, the easier it is to get more power. And that is a central problem that we all still have with our governments, with dictators, with people even in our own home, or, you know, in our friendship groups. And the more powerful we become, the less empathy we may feel for those below us. You know, the more separate you feel from them, the less you're going to feel towards them or care about them. And again, you know, Hughes is saying here that the hawk is naturally born without empathy because he's naturally designed to kill and hurt other people. Okay, so that is the final thoughts. I'm so happy that this video is only 22 minutes. Woohoo! So obviously I've tried to make the lesson a bit shorter. Take some time now to go back over things if you need to, but I'm hoping that you will finish that in under an hour. Ask me any questions if you're not sure about anything, and I'm gonna upload to my homework some extra notes just in case you want to do any further reading or anything. I recommend GCSE Pod. There'll be videos on there on hot roosting if you want to go and have a look at those as well. You know, I feel like I've taught you everything you need to know, but just in case you're super interested and want to do extra work, because you're so good like that. Please, no pressure though. Okay, right, take care guys, and I will do another video for you tomorrow.